Growing up near the Crinkle, I was always told not to go near it, much less enter it. It sounds harmless, which is why a few tourists try every year, but the National Guard has posts around the perimeter keeping away trespassers. It's a hefty fine if you get caught, and if you aren't caught, well, good luck to you. It's a wall of dark fog separating my town from the eastern border of New America. It takes 3 times as long to drive around it, but cutting through is not an option. The old roads have been blocked off, and a wire fence spans the entire length. The town thrives on the tourists it brings, being right in the midpoint. You can see its length go down north and south for miles. I work summers in the main observatory, built into a mountainside. The elevation gives you an even better view of the abomination. In 1950, a park ranger reported the strange mass covering a few feet of ground. It stayed for weeks, and soon scientists came from around the world to study it. Spread about 4 feet on each side every year for the first 11 years. During this period, scientists were able to enter it without concern. They took samples of the plants still within it, but not much was released to the public on what they found. It wasn't until 1962 that the first pair went missing. A Stanford biology professor and his student went in and never came out. This caused nationwide panic, and nearby towns were evacuated. Research continued on the Crinkle. The focus shifted solely to stopping its spread and trying to contain it, even as it grew faster every year. Thankfully, the fog stabilized a decade later, and now it's just a looming wall that could lead to hell for all we know. That's the spiel I give to tourists. They eat up that last part. I hated it. Even when the sun was shining, it would suck away all the light, bathing my town in perpetual gray. I was going to go far away for college. It was just another summer day. I was wiping down the floor-to-ceiling windows of the observatory when I noticed something. A bird flew out of the Crinkle. Nothing ever comes out of it. I was stunned. Pushing away a tourist, I grabbed the telescope. Another bird flew out of the fog, then a dozen more in V formation. The tourists around me were pointing and smiling, snapping pictures of the phenomenon. It was all wrong. That was when I saw them. Dark figures in the void, nearly as tall as the deck I was on. I was the first one speeding down the mountain. I didn't look back as the sirens started to sound. But as I sped down the mountain, the sirens grew louder, more urgent, blaring through the air like a warning from some ancient deity. I glanced back only once, just in time to see the figures emerging fully from the Crinkle, their forms becoming clearer in the harsh daylight. They were not human, nor any creature I could name. Their elongated limbs and featureless faces sent a chill down my spine. I didn't stop running until I was far from the town, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The horizon was lit with the eerie glow of the Crinkle, and the sounds of battle and despair echoed behind me. As I looked back one last time, the fog seemed to pulse and expand, swallowing up the town, and I knew that nowhere was safe anymore. It was a quiet Friday night, the kind of night where the city seemed to take a breath and settle into a rare moment of peace. I was parked in my squad car, the hum of the engine a comforting background noise. My partner, Officer Williams, was standing a few feet away, his face illuminated by the glow of his phone. He seemed tense, his voice a low murmur as he spoke. Just as he ended the call and slipped his phone back into his pocket, the radio crackled to life. "Officer Jackson, we've got a report of a dead body in the woods." Picked up the speaker. "Where exactly?" "Half a mile east of the gas station," dispatcher replied. Williams climbed into the passenger seat, his hands glistening with some sort of fluid. "Man, that was a fucking monster of a job," he exclaimed, wiping his hands on his pants. "Watch your language," I said sharply. "We've got a case to handle." He nodded, uncharacteristically silent as I started the car and pulled onto the road. We were close, only about a mile from the gas station. The night seemed to grow darker as we approached the scene, the air thick with an uneasy stillness. After 10 minutes, we arrived at the location. The headlights illuminated a grim sight, the lifeless body of a woman sprawled on the ground. We stepped out, the gravel crunching under our boots. "Jesus, is the killer still around?" Williams muttered, scanning the woods nervously. I approached the body, noticing 3 deep claw marks across her chest. The sight sent a shiver down my spine. "I'll call the ambulance. You check for identification." Williams didn't respond, just crouched by the body. As I spoke with the dispatcher, I watched him sift through the woman's belongings, his movements oddly furtive. He slipped her ID card into his pocket, a strange glint in his eye. Something about his demeanor set off alarm bells. His right hand, now exposed to the moonlight, looked distorted, almost like a claw. My heart raced as the pieces clicked together in my mind. I ended the call and stared at him. "What did you find?" "Jenny Watson, age 37, married, with 2 children," said, his voice eerily calm. He looked up at me, his eyes dark and empty. I didn't hesitate. I drew my pistol and fired, the shots echoing through the silent woods. Williams crumpled to the ground, and I kept shooting until the gun clicked empty. Panting, I approached his body. His right hand had fully transformed into a grotesque, monstrous claw. The reality of what had just happened hit me like a freight train. My partner, someone I had trusted, was something inhuman. The silence of the woods felt oppressive as I stood there, the enormity of the situation settling over me. Called for backup, my hands shaking, knowing that the nightmare was only just beginning. When the other officers arrived, they found me sitting on the ground, staring at Williams' body. Reports and investigations that followed were a blur, a whirlwind of questions and disbelief. The truth, however, was undeniable. Williams had been hiding a monstrous secret, and I had been forced to confront it in the most brutal way possible. In the end, I was commended for my quick thinking, but the praise felt hollow. The image of Williams' clawed hand haunted my dreams, a constant reminder of the horrors that can lurk just beneath the surface. The city eventually returned to its usual rhythm. For me, the shadows seemed a little darker, and the nights a little longer. In the sleepy village of Ravencroft, a dense, ancient forest loomed at its edge, known to the locals as the Whispering Woods. No one dared enter, for it was said that once inside, could hear voices, ghostly whispers calling out, luring travelers deeper until they were never seen again. The villagers avoided the forest like a plague, sharing tales of those who had disappeared within its shadowy depth. Late one autumn evening, young Eliza, curious and adventurous soul, decided to venture into the Whispering Woods. She had grown weary of the ominous stories and sought to uncover the truth. Armed with a lantern and a notebook, she set off along the narrow, winding path that led into the heart of the forest. The air grew colder and heavier with each step Eliza took. Trees, twisted and gnarled, seemed to close in around her, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. The wind whispered through the leaves, carrying with it faint, disembodied voices. Eliza could barely make out what they were saying, but they seemed to be calling her name, drawing her further into the dark embrace of the woods. As she ventured deeper, the whispers grew louder and more distinct. "Eliza, Eliza, come closer," they beckoned. Her lantern flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced across the forest floor. Eliza's heart raced, but her curiosity overpowered her fear. She pressed on, determined to unravel the mystery of the Whispering Woods. Suddenly, the path split into 3, each leading into thicker darkness. The whispers intensified, coming from all directions, each voice trying to pull her toward a different route. Panic began to set in, as Eliza realized she was lost. She chose the middle path, hoping it would lead her out of the labyrinthine forest. The trees grew denser, their branches intertwining, to form a canopy that blocked out the moonlight. Eliza's lantern finally died, plunging her into pitch-black darkness. The whispers now surrounded her, filling her ears with chilling laughter and desperate pleas. "Help us, Eliza," they cried. "Join us." Desperation clawed at Eliza's mind as she stumbled forward, her hands outstretched to feel her way through the oppressive darkness. The ground beneath her feet became uneven and soft, as if she were walking on a bed of decaying leaves and bones. Her breath came in ragged gasps, and she could feel the cold tendrils of fear wrapping around her heart. Then she saw it, faint, ghostly light ahead, flickering like a will-o'-the-wisp. It called to her, promising safety and an escape from the whispers that gnawed at her sanity. With renewed hope, Eliza stumbled toward the light, her heart pounding in her chest. But as she reached out to grasp it, the ground beneath her gave way. She fell, tumbling into a deep, dark pit. The whispers grew louder, laughing and jeering as she plummeted into the abyss. The last thing she heard before everything went black was a voice, clear and mocking, whispering in her ear, "Welcome home, Eliza.